Hello, and welcome to the Lee Enochs Show, America's most controversial podcast. On today's episode, we will be talking the sitting president and where his rankings rank all time amongst all presidents. What do you got for me today, Lee?
Hey, Ryan, welcome to the show. Welcome to the live stream audience out there. This is the Lee Enochs Show, America's most controversial podcast, and this is a great American podcast, guys. We're going to get this going again. I know over the years I had different iterations of this show. I'm over here at UNT, the University of North Texas, earning a master's degree in journalism. I decided, I'm going to get my podcast going over here, and they've been so gracious to me to be able to do my show here on the radio with a radio station over here on campus. Ryan, awesome in sports. He doesn't talk about politics too much, but he's got a show, The Main Event, talks about, love your takes on sports, Ryan.
Thank you.
So when is that show on, if you want to listen to that?
Right now it goes up on like Fridays. We do a Zoom, me and my co-host do a thing on Fridays, and then we'll decide when we're going to put on an actual episode in the fall once we get our class schedules and get settled in.
I'm right there with you, man. I plan to do a weekly podcast, everybody. A lot of you guys have asked for that over the years. I'm trying to be more consistent with that going forward. So Brittney Griner, Baylor University graduate, spectacular basketball player, right? Did Baylor win the national championship under her?
Yep, NCAA champion.
Then she comes over to the WNBA, which hardly anybody watches, by the way. One told me that.
The NBA has been subsidizing the WNBA for years, yeah.
You broke off some knowledge I didn't even know. I thought they were at least getting like 10,000 people per game and had a great audience or something like that to keep it going all these years. So I didn't know that was getting subsidized by the NBA. But anyways, Brittney Griner, spectacular WNBA player. She's won 2 WNBA scoring titles. She was a 3-time All-American, first-team All-American at Baylor. No one questions her ability on the basketball court. Spectacular player. I think during the off season, she goes over to Russia. I think the last 5 years. Correct me when I'm wrong here.
No,
right?
you're on track so far.
So she goes over to Russia, and she has a hashish oil.
Yeah, in a cartridge,
right? And she's busted by the Russian government. They go through her luggage. They find these, this oil cartridges, and she's been in jail now in Russia, detained for over 100 days. She pleaded guilty to doing this, and she's being detained. Now she faces up to 10 years in prison in Russia. Some people are saying, I think even Joe Biden says that she's been unlawfully detained. Now, here's my take on it. Okay, this is not a sports show. I love sports, and I could talk with Ryan all day long about different sports events. And we got the Major League All-Star game coming up. I'm looking forward to that. I'm trying to sit down and watch that. But we're talking about Brittney Griner, and then we're talking about LeBron James's comments about this. So, Brittney Griner, what are you doing going to Russia with hemp oil? I mean, first of all, you got to know Russia's laws about this. What do you think, Ryan?
Well, this is obviously kind of one of those ones where sports and politics coincide, because sometimes that happens, especially in today's world. But I think it is perfectly possible that she just threw a cartridge in there, and maybe she has non-THC cartridges, and she mixed up which one it was. My wife has like a vape pen or whatever, so and sometimes she just throws, and she's got multiple of them, so sometimes she just throws one in without thinking to the bag. It's not like THC, it's just nicotine. But I could easily see that being a mistake that happens, because she wouldn't know after playing in 5 years that it's illegal. So I could see it being either way, where she either did it knowingly or unknowingly. But either way, as I mentioned on my podcast to my co-host, it is possible for her to have been arrested, rightfully so, for having an illegal substance in a foreign country, and B, also be unlawfully detained because Russia is trying to get her on bigger charges that are not applicable, but they're going to try and get something out of her from the US by like some prisoner swap or something. And so the best way for them to do that is for them to investigate her for large scale trafficking, which is definitely not the case because it was just one cartridge. But that's why they're investigating her. So it is possible for her to be in the wrong for being arrested and also still be unlawfully detained for longer, like the Russian government is trying to do.
Ryan, she goes over there during a war,
Mhm.
okay?
Mhm.
Or at least at that time, they're mounting all those troops at the Ukrainian border.
Mhm.
She's got to know, like, what's in her luggage, man, in Russia, and a country that's
I
pretty hostile right now to America and
I don't
Western.
disagree. I don't disagree, but I think it's also like I said, it's possible for it to be both. Is she in the wrong? 110%. Is Russia also unlawfully detaining her for more than she is rightfully be or to rightfully be charged with? Also, yes. It can coexist. This isn't a black and white thing or one or the other.
So LeBron James,
Mhm.
let's quote him accurately. Do you have the quote? Like, so LeBron
I
James
sure
goes
do.
over there and he says something like, basically he's questioning if America has her back.
Yes. LeBron James said in a trailer for the latest episode of his talk show, quote, "Now, how can she feel like America has her back?" Unquote. And then finishing another quote says, quote, "I would be feeling like, do I even want to go back to America?" End quote.
So here's LeBron James. Now, I'm not going to question LeBron James's ability on a basketball court. Like Brittney Griner, spectacular player, probably one of the best players of our generation. I'm not a big fan of his politics. I mean, he's been in bed with China for a long time, and he has a lot of business deals with China. I don't see him questioning the Chinese government's morality and human rights violations and things of that nature. He actually, I remember, what was it, Daryl Morley, the former Houston Rockets general manager, was in defense of Hong Kong
Hmm.
in their civil rights, and basically he said he shouldn't be. LeBron James basically said he shouldn't talk about that.
Yes. So, and that's part of the issue I have with LeBron James saying this kind of stuff, and really a lot of people like the Phoenix Mercury head coach, Vanessa, and I'm going to butcher this last name. I think Nygaard, um, says told reporters if it was LeBron, he'd be home already. It's a statement about the value of women, it's a statement about the value of a black person, it's a statement about the value of a gay person. All those things we know it, and so that what hurts a little more. It's just these people calling out the U.S. government for not bringing her home. uh, Make LeBron James comments about Daryl Morey. What's the proper word for it?
Hypocritical.
Hypocritical, because he said about Daryl Morey's comments on Hong Kong. I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand, and he spoke, and so many people could have been harmed, not only financially, but physically, emotionally, spiritually. So, neither LeBron or Vanessa Nygaard, as far as I know, are educated on the inner dealings of the political back and forth negotiations between Russia and U.S. over not just Brittney Griner, but the multitudes of U.S. citizens who are being wrongfully detained in Russia, like Paul Whelan, who has been stuck in Russia since 2019 for quote unquote, what was it here? For espionage. And then a guy that we just traded a convicted drug trafficker from in here to Russia for a guy named Trevor Reed back in May, who is being held for endangering the life and health of Russian police, even though that was never proven. So this is not about Brittney Griner being black, woman, gay, whatever. This is about all Americans being held in detention. And some of these people have been there for years. Brittney Griner's been there for 100 days. Not saying it's not bad, because it is bad when any U.S. citizen is held in detention for wrongful reasons. But you can't claim to say that the U.S. isn't doing everything they can to get people home. You don't know what's going on in these
Diplomacy behind the
negotiations. Yeah, you
scenes.
don't know what's going on in diplomacy. You're not educated in it, as LeBron said
Obviously, it's
about Daryl
not.
Morey.
Yeah.
Well, and as he said about Daryl Morey when he made to Hong Kong, you're not educated in it. You don't know. It's not like Biden's telling you on the phone every day, oh, hey, by the way, here's what we're trying to do to get Brittney Griner home. Y'all don't know what they're trying to do. So, and it, like I said, it's obviously not about her being black, woman, or gay because it took us 3 years just to get a straight white dude home who was a former Marine.
You
And she
know,
hasn't even been there 100
but
days.
here's the real scoop on this whole thing. You have Russia that's in a brutal war against Ukraine, is systematically killing women, children, men, bombing malls. Do you think that they really care about what the West has to say about detaining a basketball player that had hemp cartridges in her
No, this is,
luggage?
like I said, it's all to get something out of the U.S., just like they held this former Marine, and just like they're holding this guy who was just, he was discharged from the Marines in 2008, and then he worked as a global security executive for an auto parts supplier. I mean, these guys are like nothing celebrity wise. Um, and they were held for one was held for 3 years, and one's still being held there since 2019. This has so like it. This has nothing to do with what Russia thinks because Russia doesn't care. They just want something out of the U.S. and they're going to hold them until they get what they want.
You know, Russia, I hate to say this, is an evil empire. I mean, I have been personally shocked and wrote something in the Star Telegram down in Fort Worth. I thought that America should do more. Actually, I know this is a controversial thing because some people are saying Joe Biden can't even supply baby formula to Americans. Why should he give more money to the Ukraine? But basically, the Ukraine is on a verge of, I mean, they're really getting bombed heavily by Russia right now. And Russia doesn't care what the West has to say at all,
Yeah.
at all. So you're absolutely right. Um, Guys, it's really rare that I see a guy that has sports knowledge and good takes like you do. We're here at UNT. I just want to talk to this young guy and say, hey, Ryan, you got all the gifts in the world. I think
Oh, thank
you
you.
have Rich Eisen like gifts. Rich Eisen's on ESPN Radio, intellectually rigorous guy. I think you have a lot of similar gifts. You know, you've never really listened to the show or anything. I think um, the future is really bright for you, my friend. Let's get into some other political issues here. But usually we have a tradition that's we developed this summer to talk about sports of all things before we get into some of the issues. But the thing I wanted to talk about is Joe Biden's approval ratings. Now, Ryan, it seemed to me that for the first year of Biden's presidency, he was getting away with pretty much anything. The media just was treating him with like kid gloves, so to speak, and they were basically protecting Biden. Okay, and then all of a sudden, about a year ago, 11 months ago, the real hasty withdrawal from Kabul and Afghanistan took place, and almost overnight, Biden's approval ratings drop. One of the things that the media can no longer protect Biden at that point. Obviously, it's no. I saw a stat that I think 80% of I don't know how to even gauge this. People in the media, like we're Biden supporters. So Biden's had a free pass up until recently. Over the last month or so, you're seeing major newspapers like the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, which is not a newspaper, but it's just another media entity, just calling into question Biden's intellectual ability, cognitive abilities, calling into question his age, 79 years old. And there are progressives now abandoning the Biden campaign or Biden White House in droves right now, basically saying he shouldn't run again. I'm reading some of the Twitter feeds of some progressives. They're saying, what has Biden done for us? Well, they put a pretty progressive Supreme Court justice on Supreme Court. That's a big deal. He did there for their take. But it's true. Biden has pretty much failed as a president from, conservative perspective. I just want to be real clear. I'm not a Trump sycophant. Like I don't just follow whatever Trump says. I did vote for Trump in 2020. Didn't do it in 2016. So I want to be real clear that I'm sympathetic to a lot of Trump's things, but sometimes he says some pretty outrageous things that make me cringe. I think personally, Trump's probably going to run again, and it's going to be the same thing all over again. Now, I looked at there's a recent New York Times poll. Get the actual poll here that New York Times Siena College nationwide survey has Joe Biden's approval ratings at 33%. Other approval ratings about 30. That Biden is tracking at 30% approval rating. This is lower than George W. Bush's approval rating at the end of his disastrous second term, where the economy basically collapsed and we went into the Great Recession. This is lower than Trump's approval ratings pretty much at any time during his presidency. The question is, what's wrong with Joe Biden? What's wrong with why are these approval ratings so low? Now, here's my take. I've been following politics my entire life. It's not like Joe Biden had this massive mandate when he ran for president initially. If you follow it really carefully, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were not going to win the presidency. Bernie Sanders looked like he was going to win the Democratic National. He was going to win the primaries and be the candidate for the Democrats. And then one fateful Sunday evening, he goes, I think it was in February or early March of 2020, Bernie Sanders goes on 60 Minutes, is interviewed by Anderson Cooper. Now remember, Anderson Cooper is left of center, very sympathetic to a lot of Biden's positions. And he goes on there, and Anderson Cooper, or Biden, even Bernie Sanders' position. So Bernie Sanders goes on 60 Minutes, and he praises Fidel Castro. He goes on there and he mentions that he did his honeymoon in Russia in 1988 during the former Soviet Union. And he starts saying some pretty positive things about communism and socialism. Clearly states that he's a democratic socialist. The next day, all these candidates start dropping out left and right. My belief is this: all these Democratic candidates start dropping out of the primaries. Pete Buttigieg, all these guys start dropping out. I think what happened is that the Democratic National Convention, the party, the committee, got scared and they thought that Bernie Sanders actually had a chance of winning the nomination. And so what happened is they pressured some of the people that weren't going to win a nomination but were taking percentage points and votes away from Biden, and they coalesced around Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't win any of these primaries until that occurred. And then he wins Super Tuesday, and he becomes the candidate. Obviously, there's a lot of hatred towards Trump in the world, and Trump. I'm not going to get into the whole issue of. I'm not personally a conspiracy theorist. I get into the issue about, was there election fraud? I'm not really sure about all that. I know people will be disappointed in hearing that from me, but we know that basically massive controversy takes place. Trump loses, and Biden's in the White House. Biden has massive support by the Democratic base at this point. He's not Trump. Anybody but Trump, pretty much, is what the cry was. And so he has goodwill from the media, okay? And he wastes it all. He wasted it all. He can't get anything done. And then eventually the Kabul withdrawal takes place. Afghanistan. Americans die over there. They didn't foresee it. Now, this is a fact. I debate one of my progressive friends on a daily basis. We pretty much have a podcast. I'm prepping for this podcast every day at work. Just got a progressive guy down in Fort Worth, basically. Scott, I want to give you a shout out. I thank you for prepping me for the show every day at work. But Scott and I debate back and forth, and he says, "Well, They just didn't know that there'd be such a collapse of the Afghan military and that the Taliban would take over. But how could Biden know that? How could Biden know that? You're talking about the most powerful country in the world, and our intelligence couldn't tell you. We didn't have the intelligence to tell you that the Afghan army was collapsing, that the government there was collapsing, and the Taliban just took over. They didn't know that was going to happen. I think Biden, and you can see this in the polls, his polls dropped. The media could not protect him anymore. And then basically his approval ratings plummeted. And there's been things have occurred, gaffe after gaffe after gaffe have taken place. All the polls, Ryan, indicate that the Democrats now are in deep political doo-doo come the midterm elections. Barring some kind of catastrophic turnaround, phenomenal turnaround for Biden, their election losses during the midterm elections are projected to rival 1994 when Newt Gingrich and the Republicans took back the House for the first time in 40 years. A massive landslide is predicted for the Democrats. The Republicans are going to take back the House for sure. Okay, so Nancy Pelosi will no longer be the Speaker of the House and the leader of Congress. Good chance, good possibility that the Democrats are going to lose the Senate and that the Republicans are going to be in control all over again. Now, I don't really rejoice over that. As a lifelong conservative, Republicans have had the House before. They've had both chambers of Congress before. They've had Bush in there and had both houses, both chambers of Congress, and did nothing except squander things and they went to war against Iraq unwisely under pretense of false pretense of weapons of mass destruction. So I'm not going to praise the Republicans on this. Okay, that's what I'm not going to just say, oh, happy days are here again if the Republicans are taking over. Our political situation is broken in America, just broken, fundamentally broken. And while I'm glad, I personally want to say this, I'm glad that Roe versus Wade was overturned. As a lifelong pro-life person, you can listen to my show a couple of weeks ago when I talk about that. I don't praise the Republican Party and what they've done over the last 20 years. They've had majorities. They've squandered them and got nothing done. We're in some big problems right now, okay? Gas prices are raging out of control. Inflation rates are the highest they've been in 40 years. Joe Biden's approval ratings are low because people don't have confidence in the economy. They don't have confidence. The average person out there is basically worried that we're going to fall into another great recession like in 2008. And speaking of that, I mean, that was a Republican president who had both chambers of Congress, and it completely shipwrecked the American economy. Okay? A lot of people don't know this, but if you talk about national debt, I'm a big Ron Paul supporter. These guys want to see the national debt lowered and less spending. And they've made some good points. Why are we giving so much money to Ukraine when we can't even take care of our own? We can't balance our own budget, right? But from 1776 to 2008, before Obama got in there, the national debt was hovering around $10 trillion. These guys, these lame politicians, and this includes Trump administration. Trump was no friend to lowering the national debt. This guy was spending money like a rich kid in a candy shop, okay, to say it lightly, okay? Money it's not worth anything anymore, okay? I mean, here's the average person I'm out there talking to, because I work retail down in Fort Worth during the summers. I go down and work a job down there selling men's suits, okay? Pretty casual today, but it's also 110 degrees here in Fort Worth and not wearing a suit to a podcast, right? But this is what the average person is saying out there. This is not Democrat. This is not Republican. This is the average person. I don't want to take out a credit card because I don't want to get. I don't know what's going on with the economy. Um, I think another recession is going to take place. This is what average Americans are saying. People have lost confidence in Joe Biden's ability to lead the country. And the truth is, deep down inside, I hate to tell you guys this, but Joe Biden's best days are behind him. The backslapping politician that was the vice president under Obama is gone. His cognitive abilities are declining. I'm sorry, Scott, my buddy out there. Like, this guy's making gaffes all the time, just tremendous gaffes. And the Democrats are worried. They're really worried. Is Biden going to run again? They just wanted Trump out of there. But now, hey, Biden has been you talk about career politician. So Biden, he goes to law school, and this is a fact. He was almost kicked out of law school at Syracuse Law for plagiarizing one of his papers, failed the class, graduates at near the bottom of his class at Syracuse Law School, surprisingly wins an upset election in the early 70s, I think 72. He's one of the youngest people to ever win a Senate race. Goes through a massive tragedy where his wife and kids were in a car crash. He loses his wife, and I think his daughter passed away in that crash. But he doesn't drop out. He doesn't drop out, and man, my condolences are for Biden. To this day, I mean, it's a horrible thing he went through. But he becomes, pretty outspoken senator, and he runs for president in 1988 until he has to step down. Because why? He does what he did in law school. He plagiarized speeches, and he had to step out of the race. He plagiarized. This is a fact. He had, by pressure, had to step out of the race in 1988 because he plagiarized word for word a campaign speech by a Labor Party candidate in Great Britain. So basically, he's been his politician for all these years. He was the major judicial overseer for the Democrats in the U.S. Senate Judicial Chairman, to get the exact title. And then Obama chooses him. He runs for president again, doesn't win, middle of the pack, doesn't win any primary, and Obama chooses him to be his running mate. Now, in fairness to Biden, I mean, if somebody asked me to objectively to look at Biden, I'm not going to praise him for very much. I'm not a Biden fan. I'm not pro-choice. I challenge his Catholicism. This is why many students at University of Notre Dame did not want him to speak at their graduation this year. They did a petition drive. I think they had 4,000 signatures. They didn't want Biden to speak because he's Catholic, and yet he's radically pro-choice. They didn't want to, the Catholic position is pro-life. And the Pope, which I don't really support much of what this present Pope is saying and is all about, but he even came out praising the recent overturning of Roe versus Wade. Is the Pope pro-life? Well, is the Pope Catholic? Meaning, absolutely. Biden has thrown away his Catholicism and has adopted very progressive pro-choice positions. Now, one thing that I would have to say about Biden, what are his strengths? Well, Biden has a phenomenal ability to connect with African American voters. No question about it. I'll give him his props for that. He's always been that good. Phenomenal. Retail politics. Joe Biden is also very good at meeting construction workers, people that are, it's funny, some of the same people that would vote for Trump, like kind of our Biden supporters. Middle class, non-educated white voters have traditionally supported Biden, but he's been phenomenal at connecting with African American voters. I think that's one of the reasons why Barack Obama supported him. But so let's get fast forward now to his presidency. So what's causing all this? I think I mentioned it. Inflation. I mean, the other day I was just I think Walmart, and I was looking at the prices, and just the last year, Ryan, prices are going up for everything. I don't know if you've seen that, Ryan. I mean, I was just trying to get some underwear the other day. Just it's like 20 something bucks just to get a pair of underwear. I mean, a pack of underwear, and just I mean, say what you want to say about Trump, but gas prices were much lower under Trump. Now I know there's a lot of mitigating circumstances with that. Okay, about COVID and whatnot, but before COVID hit, gas prices were on average about $2.50 a gallon across the country. Gas prices are raging out of control. I know that Biden's trying to drop them a little bit. So that's the first thing. Inflation. People don't support Biden, or they've lost confidence in Biden because of they don't think the economy's on the right track. They look at things like that, and that's during the Clinton years, people said, why are people supporting Clinton? A famous statement by James Carville, who was his campaign manager, who orchestrated that win in 1992, is the economy, stupid. The economy. The Democrats are thinking that they're going to roar back into this, surge back into this race and win the midterm elections based on Roe versus Wade. They'll get some people, yes. Some people are going to be galvanized and go out and vote for Biden. But the average, or go out and vote for Democratic candidates, but the average American just wants to pay his rent, pay his mortgage, pay bills. They don't want to spend. People are, here's something, Ryan, that people told me. I talk to people all the time out there, just average people. They say to me, man, I just spent $100 on my gas. I just spent $125, $150 to fill up my tank. People are just saying, I can't afford. A young girl I talked to recently, really not was a young girl. She's probably like in her 30s, early 40s. She tells me, I can't afford to live in America anymore. It's like she's a single mom. She's trying to put food on a plate. She said, I can't afford to go to the stores I used to go to. She's a real healthy lady, and she likes going to Central Market and Whole Foods. She's going to Walmart now. And what's that? Is it Winco? She's going to Winco, right? A lady went from Whole Foods to going to Winco. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I have never seen more people walk out of a store stunned, shock and awe over the prices than at Whole Foods. Go to Whole Foods one day and just stand for like a half hour near the cash register, just and watch people look at the receipts because of how high the prices are. When I go to Walmart, I don't just double check, okay, was that bag of chips for $2 or whatever? But you see stunned shoppers because the prices are so high at Whole Foods and these like quote unquote organic food stores. The bottom line, the reason why Biden's approval ratings are plummeting to 30%. Some people say it can't get any lower. Yes, they can. Yes, it can. Some people are even saying now, is Joe Biden the worst president in American history? I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to say. Now, there's been some bad presidents over in American history. Now, real weird twist of fate, I literally lived across the street from Richard Nixon's birthplace. Right across the street on Yorba Linda Boulevard, Imperial Highway in Yorba Linda, California. My church was right there. I went to that church many, many years. Matter of fact, at my wedding, one of the pastors from a church right next to Richard Nixon's birthplace was one of the main officiants at my wedding. Richard Nixon's Watergate was pretty bad. Okay, I mean, pretty clearly, in my opinion, Richard Nixon was behind the scenes orchestrating Watergate. Okay, I mean, if you look at the facts on that, I know it's a controversial thing. Don't get me wrong. I probably still would vote for Richard Nixon if he ran again. Okay, if he's still alive, by the way. But Richard Nixon was great in foreign policy. Okay, he ended the Vietnam War. Okay, great policy. But did he orchestrate these plumbers to go into the Democratic National headquarters? And I think it was Nixon all the way. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to go on the 48th anniversary of Richard Nixon's resignation. August 6th, 1974, Richard Nixon resigned, the only president in U.S. history to resign. A lot of historians would say he was one of the worst presidents because of that, just that level, stooping that level. And the crazy thing is, I don't want to relitigate a presidency that took place over 50 years ago. The craziest thing about Nixon was that he didn't need to do Watergate. He was running against George McGovern. He's left of Bernie Sanders today. He won over I think he might got close to 500 electoral college votes. I think D.C. and Massachusetts were the only states or the only regions that McGovern won. Okay, he had no reason. He was just paranoid, and Watergate took place. I think Nixon. Another person in history, if you guys want to study this out, was Andrew Jackson. A lot of people think that Trump kind of bases populist presidency on a kind of a model that a populist model that Andrew Jackson took. But Andrew Jackson was the primary architect of the relocation of Native American Indians in the United States, where Native American Indians were forced off their lands, their historic lands that their families had owned, and made to walk on a Trail of Tears. I think that the total distance of the Trail of Tears, Ryan, was 5,000 miles. Thousands of American Indians died. You had a U.S. president that orchestrated that. He was clearly racist. Clearly racist. Another U.S. president, I think it was worse than Joe Biden, was a guy named Woodrow Wilson. Now, Woodrow Wilson was a president. He is an alumnus of Princeton, became the president of Princeton, governor of New Jersey, wins a split election in 1912 between Teddy Roosevelt, President William Howard Taft, and wins the presidency. Almost immediately, he becomes this progressive politician who, before him, you can check the history books, there was no national income tax. He gets in there as national income tax. Okay? But just check Woodrow Wilson's track record at Princeton. Did not want to see African-American students attend Princeton. Clearly racist policies. There have been, I think each president in American history has had their faults and their strengths. It's hard for me at this point in time to see the strengths of Joe Biden. I'm not going to lie and tell you that I'm not biased. But one thing as I close here, I do not want to see Joe Biden fail at this point, because if it gets worse, we're headed towards a Great Recession, guys, and maybe even a depression here in the United States. I don't want that. Okay? Look, whether or not Trump or Biden is in there is really not going to, me as just an average American citizen, is it really going to affect me that much? But if the economy completely collapses, that's another story. So I don't want to see Biden I don't want to see it get worse. Okay? Do I want to see Biden win the presidency again in 2024? Absolutely not. But I don't want it to get worse. Absolutely not. I think basically just people have lost confidence. To answer that question, they've lost confidence in Biden's ability to navigate the American economy, and people are really experiencing pain at the pump. Inflation prices are driving up food prices. It's trickled down to the 911 is out there. They don't think Biden knows what he's doing. And Biden's approval ratings are plummeting because of those factors. This is Lee Enochs. This is the Lee Enochs Show, America's most controversial podcast, the Great American Podcast, saying you need to speak the truth in love. We'll talk to you next time. God bless you.